The boy stayed by the side of the person he liked for 10 years, and finally mustered up the courage to kiss her. 10 years of love became a memory. The boy's name is Guan-sik. Since childhood, Guan-sik has always protected Yi-sun. The villagers often joked that if Yi-sun, the village beauty, could marry Guan-sik, the whole island would be hers. Hearing this, Aichuan's blood pressure shot up instantly, and she angrily kicked the basket of seafood Guan-sik had just collected. Yi-sun always felt she never received her mother's affection and often complained that her mom should have just given birth to a storm instead. Every time her mom came back from the sea in the pouring rain, Dan would start venting. That storm must be mom's real child. Even when I won second place in a competition, she didn't praise me. Her mom was a mysterious presence. At her grandmother's house, Yi-sun's uncle forbade her from eating yellow croaker. Hearing this, her mother was furious, but Yi-sun begged to stay and eat with her mom. Even so, she was driven away. How could her mom treat her like that? But then the plot took a twist. Yi-sun's mom discovered Yi-sun had soaked her cigarettes to stop her from smoking. Overcome with maternal love, she decided to personally take Yi-sun to school, slamming 2 strings of yellow croaker onto the table and confidently taking Yi-sun away. Yi-sun even thanked her uncle for not letting her eat the yellow croaker, otherwise, she wouldn't have had the chance to live with her mom. Sun said she liked her mom simply because she was her mom. Her mom replied, "If you really like me, then hurry up and grow up so you can give me 101 every day." It was then Yi-sun realized her mom's little quirks were actually quite endearing. Meanwhile, Yi-sun was upset because Guan-sik had taken away the class president position. She threw a tantrum, refusing to be the vice president. Guan-sik insisted An was rightfully elected, but she was determined to fight for it. Guan-sik's mom even plotted to rig the election, which was unbelievable. Frustrated, An went home in tears, and her mom, furious, got dressed up and marched to the school. She saw the award list and confronted the teacher, demanding that the top-ranking student give their spot to Yi-sun. The teacher, stunned, accepted a bribe from her mom, who even gave him a fish and a purse. Honestly, the teacher's reaction was baffling. But happiness didn't last. Yi-sun's mom had asthma and nearly died at sea, yet she stubbornly wanted to continue fishing. Enraged, Yi-sun burned her mom's fishing clothes. On her way out, she saw Guan-sik carving into a stone, "Yi-sun is my wife." Sun picked up a stone and hurled it into the sea, crying and begging the ocean to spare her mother. She said her mom had suffered all her life, never even flown on a plane. Guan-sik stayed by Yi-sun's side, even giving her the meat he was reluctant to share with his family. Yi-sun's grandmother prayed for a miracle to let Yi-sun's mom live. In the end, Sun's mom found her grandmother and asked her to leave together. Yi-sun's mom woke her up to eat roasted fish and told her that if she ever left, Yi-sun should find her uncle and let him give her away at her wedding. Yi-sun broke down in tears. It was heartbreaking to see her so devastated. After Yi-sun cried herself to sleep, her mom left, leaving Yi-sun and the child of the sacrificed father behind. Guan-sik brought Yi-sun eggs and seaweed, and the two of them grieved together. Yi-sun buried her mother in the fields she had worked on. The village chief wanted Yi-sun to stay and take care of her younger brother. Yi-sun, hearing this, decided to honor the responsibility and sacrificed her own ambitions. Guan-sik supported her, even letting her set up a vegetable stand next to his own, where she sold vegetables while studying. Neighbors gossiped that Guan-sik was practically raised Yi-sun. Guan-sik's grandmother angrily tried to chase Yi-sun away, but Guan-sik stopped her and patiently helped Yi-sun. Yi-sun insisted she was only staying temporarily and would never marry Guan-sik, saying she hated the island and wanted to marry far away. But her hand found its way into Guan-sik's pocket. The two walked through the rapeseed fields, and Guan-sik gave her a light fish as a gift. Yi-sun complained how good it felt to be pitied. At school, Guan-sik always shared the leftover milk powder with Yi-sun. She wanted to know why he had been giving her fish for 10 years, but Guan-sik wouldn't look at her. Frustrated, complaining he only gave gifts without doing anything else. Then, in a surprising turn of events, Guan-sik suddenly grabbed her hand and kissed her. Though they argued, his 10-year love finally became a cherished memory. When Yi-sun heard she was holding back Guan-sik's future, she even agreed to marry a 30-year-old divorced platoon leader. When Guan-sik found out his son was getting married, he angrily questioned his family, asking why they kept introducing her to so many suitors. He was on the verge of tears, furious at In. Determined, he declared he would marry her no matter what. Yi-sun's father explained it was Yi-sun's own decision, and it was Gwon-sik's mom who convinced her. Just then, Yi-sun's voice came from outside, and Gwon-sik dashed out, dragging her back inside. He held her tightly and told her not to say a word, refusing to let her go. But Yi-sun, trembling, asked how he could disappear for so long and return out of the blue. She recalled the bitterness of their first confession, full of heartbreak. When they started dating, Yi-sun happily returned home, but she couldn't find her sister and thought she was hiding. Instead, she discovered the village chief had found another woman. That night, the other woman complained about having to take care of the village chief's child and Yi-sun's mom's child. Yi-sun returned to her uncle's house, hoping to stay together, but her uncle scolded her harshly. When she went back to the village chief's house, she found that the new wife he had brought in was tarnishing her mother's reputation. To Yi-sun's shock, her younger siblings were easily won over by a few popsicles, and even the village chief didn't speak up for her. Yi-sun asked the village chief for her university tuition fees, but the deceitful village chief tricked her again. When she returned to her uncle's house, he insisted she work at the factory. Unwilling to live this way, Han found Gwon-sik, hoping he could convince his grandmother to marry her. Only then did Gwon-sik realize the extent of the abuse Yi-sun had suffered from the village chief and her uncle. He was the only one who truly cared for her. Gwon-sik, frustrated by Yi-sun's desire to marry far away, determined to act, he took Yi-sun away. Yi-sun put on clothes belonging to the village chief's new wife, styled her hair as she did the first time Gwon-sik saw her, and adorned herself with all the jewelry she could find. She ran to meet Gwon-sik, bringing along the stolen jewelry, which she combined with what Gwon-sik had secretly taken. Nervous from their first time stealing, Gwon-sik clumsily divided the jewelry. Gwon-sik tried to wipe the tears from Yi-sun's face, and when she asked if he would ever regret it, his firm reply reassured her. The two made their way to the harbor. After boarding the ship, the captain quickly recognized they were runaways and mocked their lack of preparation. Gwon-sik tried to bribe the captain with the jewelry, but Yi-sun stopped him, boldly daring the captain to throw them overboard if he had the guts. The captain threatened Yi-sun, and Gwon-sik immediately shielded her. Sun declared they were husband and wife, then grabbed Gwon-sik's hand and marched away. Planning to sell the jewelry for money, they were tricked by a shop owner and got into trouble. Since they had no ID or citizenship cards, they couldn't stay at a hotel. Desperate, they claimed their wallets were stolen and offered the jewelry as collateral. The innkeeper, thinking they were honeymooners, agreed to let them stay until the next day. She even conspired with her husband to tease them. At first, Gwon-sik planned to sleep separately, but Yi-sun urged him closer. Just then, the innkeeper brought in a bowl of noodles, playfully saying that generous Busan people include meals with the room. The two exchanged a glance. What a strange honeymoon it was turning out to be. The innkeeper suddenly pulled out a bed for Yi-sun and Gwon-sik, hinting they should get intimate. However, the situation took a turn the next morning when they woke up to find their belongings missing. Just as Yi-sun praised the generosity of the Busan people, the innkeeper showed up demanding payment, even charging them for the food. Yi-sun discovered something suspicious, and Gwon-sik realized their luggage had been taken. The innkeeper's family accused them of having no money and threatened to call the police. Meanwhile, Gwon-sik's mother arrived in Busan looking for them, while the young couple wandered the streets with only a photo of Yi-sun's late mother. Seeing a chance, they sneaked into a house and warned each other to keep the lights off. They hid nervously, but Gwon-sik's trembling hands gave them away. Gwon-sik stuffed valuables into a bag, but the innkeeper woke up and the two fled. During their escape, Anne was almost struck, but Gwon-sik shielded her. The police recognized them as the children of the woman who often reported to the station. Gwon-sik's mother arrived and confronted the innkeeper, demanding her son's stolen belongings back, scaring off customers. The police arrested the innkeeper, and Gwon-sik's mother took Yi-sun and Gwon-sik away. As a result, Yi-sun was expelled from school. Heartbroken, she burned her beloved books and returned to her uncle's house, where he forced her to work in the factory. Gwon-sik was severely beaten by his father. The whole island gossiped about their failed elopement. Yi-sun's uncle claimed she was now unworthy of a good marriage and kicked her out, telling her to beg Guansik's family to take her in. Guansik was confused as to why he only received a slap on the wrist while Yi-sun was punished so harshly. His father refused to support Guansik's request to marry Yi-sun, cruelly blaming Yi-sun's misfortunes on her mother's vengeful spirit. Yi-sun burst in, defiantly refusing to marry Guansik, hurling harsh words that shattered his hopes. Guansik promised to care for her, but Yi-sun bitterly asked what he had ever done for her. She mocked the 10 years of fish he had given her, saying she wasn't a beggar. Guansik vowed to do everything for her, even help her pursue her studies, but Yi-sun angrily threw away his token of affection. She declared she wanted a better life, money, comfort, and security, not a lifetime of struggle by his side. Guansik, devastated, asked why she would leave him after all they had been through. Yi-sun coldly replied that even if they married, they wouldn't be happy, and she refused to spend her life trapped on the island. The relationship between Yi-sun and Guansik reaches a climactic moment when Yi-sun, feeling hopeless and pressured by her family, agrees to marry a 30-year-old divorced man. However, at the last moment, just as the wedding ship is about to depart, Yi-sun realizes she can't go through with it. She desperately calls out for Guansik, who, upon hearing her voice, immediately jumps into the sea and swims towards her with incredible determination. The villagers watch in awe as Guansik rushes to Yi-sun, and the childhood sweethearts finally reunite. Later, Guansik's family remains unsupportive. Yi-sun's dream wedding is dismissed as unrealistic, but Guansik insists on giving her the dress she wants. Yi-sun endures harsh treatment from her in-laws, including being forced to bow 3,000 times to fulfill a traditional ritual. Guansik's grandmother constantly throws red beans at Yi-sun, believing it wards off evil. Despite these challenges, Yi-sun persists, determined not to become a submissive wife but someone who can stand her ground. After settling in, Yi-sun visits her stepmother and younger siblings, showing kindness and responsibility. She bids farewell to her childhood home, promising to care for her family. Back at Guansik's house, she brings a tricycle given to her by her stepmother, but Guansik's grandmother disapproves. Nevertheless, Yi-sun insists that Guansik's younger sister should have the freedom to ride it, symbolizing her desire to break free from traditional constraints. Over time, Yi-sun becomes a part of Guansik's family, facing challenges but never losing her resolve. Years later, their daughter finds a ring in the canola flower field, an item Guansik had sold to buy a new one for Yi-sun during their elopement. Despite Guansik's grandmother planning for the girl to become a haenyeo, a female diver, Yi-sun is adamant her daughter won't follow the same difficult path. Yi-sun is determined to protect her daughter from a harsh fate similar to her own, recalling how her own mother died from a respiratory illness caused by shallow diving and warned her to avoid that life. When Yi-sun tries to leave with her daughter, Guansik's mother tries to stop her, leading to a physical struggle. The argument escalates, with Guansik's grandmother and mother hurling insults, accusing Yi-sun of inheriting her mother's misfortune and blaming her chaotic upbringing. Just as the confrontation reaches a peak, Guansik arrives, overhears everything, and firmly sides with Yi-sun. He grabs his daughter, takes Guansik's hand, and the family leaves the toxic environment for good. Though life outside is financially tough, the little family finds happiness and freedom away from constant criticism. One day, they're startled by a knock on the door, thinking it's the landlord demanding rent. Scrambling to cover the walls that their daughter had doodled on, they prepare excuses. But to their surprise, the landlord isn't here to collect rent. He's here to gift them meat and inform them someone anonymously paid 3 months of their rent. Yi-sun, surprised, even wonders if it's her late mother's spirit watching over them. It turns out to be a misunderstanding caused by the landlord's poor hearing, but the gesture lifts their spirits. Days pass, and Yi-sun becomes pregnant again. Life seems peaceful. Sun noticed Guansik's hand was injured. Yi-sun, anxious, quickly went over to check and dragged her to see a doctor. But because it had been delayed too long, her fingers might grow abnormally. Han was both angry and distressed, calling him foolishly stubborn. In the night, Yi-sun noticed the injuries around Guansik's body. She becomes suspicious. Next day, as she waved goodbye to Guansik, she arrived at the captain's house, where the captain's wife was also pregnant, with a cut at the corner of her mouth. She mentioned the captain's temper was a bit irritable but insisted he wasn't a bad person. When the boat docked, Guan-sik wanted to go home for a meal, but the captain always stopped him, saying no one could leave until he did. Meeting the captain's demands became part of the job. Guan-sik outright refused, and Isun also left the captain's house, bringing candy back with her. The captain chased after them, asking Guan-sik to bring some clothes for his daughter. What's this all about? He questioned if the captain was struggling at home, and the captain, losing his temper, kicked Guan-sik. Isun saw this and ran over, just like when someone bullied Guan-sik before, stepping forward to protect him. Isun fiercely told the captain, "Guan-sik will never work for you again." After saying this, she was ready to take Guan-sik home. The captain stubbornly muttered, "People of the same family stay together." Guan-sik hesitated, but Isun ran ahead and kicked the captain. From then on, the captain was nicknamed Dog Mistress. Isun tearfully held Guan-sik's hand as they walked home. Desperate to make ends meet, Isun and her aunt sell seafood. They hear from other women that Guan-sik competes fiercely for work and rarely discusses her job with Isun. One day, Isun notices Guan-sik's hand is injured again. Frustrated by life's endless struggles, Guan-sik eventually loses his job. To stay productive, he insists on fixing the roof. Sun tries to convince him to rest, but Guan-sik is restless without work, feeling useless. He admits he's been working since she was 9 and can't imagine life without labor. Financial troubles worsen. The rice jar runs low, and Isun recalls her mother's sacrifices. Swallowing her pride, she seeks help from Guan-sik's grandmother but hesitates, knowing her family's judgmental attitude. That night, Isun feels crushed by the weight of responsibility, being a mother, a wife, and an adult for the first time. She confides in Guan-sik, who comforts her like a mother soothing a child. Unexpectedly, the grandmother approaches Isun with money, urging her to buy food and cover it up by saying she won a prize if anyone asks. Sun hesitates, worried about guilt, but learns that the money comes from a stash earned from selling soup during wartime, money Isun's late mother had secretly arranged to help her someday. This touching revelation brings Isun a bittersweet sense of relief. Before passing away, Isun's mother had made a heartfelt request to the grandmother. If Isun ever came seeking help, it would mean she was in desperate straits, and the grandmother must help her no matter what. The grandmother honors this promise, giving Isun money that ultimately allows her and Guan-sik to buy their own boat. During a blessing ceremony for the boat, Isun suddenly feels unwell, and her water breaks. In a rush, Guan-sik heroically clears a cart and races Isun back home. After a dramatic labor, Isun safely gives birth, and Guan-sik tenderly vows to one day buy her an even bigger house. Later, Guan-sik surprises Isun by buying back the house Isun's mother once lived in. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Isun is deeply moved. The family settles into their new home, and life begins to stabilize. One night, Isun dreams of her mother, who warns her about a truck. When Isun wakes, she urgently alerts her neighbors, narrowly avoiding a tragedy. In a final twist of fate, Isun gives birth again, and Guan-sik's fishing business prospers, truly a case of hardship giving way to happiness. However, the sea remains a cruel force. It claimed Isun's mother and later her beloved son. Isun returns home one day, seeing a fallen spoon and candy her lost son once loved. She breaks down, devastated by regrets. Meanwhile, Guan-sik arranges affairs for their deceased son, overcome with grief. The couple's sorrow is raw and shattering. Time rewinds, and Isun's rise to vice president of the town's association is shown. Later, during a chaotic event, she finds the captain's wife hiding in the restroom. To save face, Isun decides to help her escape, but the daring act nearly causes a disaster. During a tense moment, the captain's wife accidentally slips, drawing attention and chaos. The captain angrily calls for her capture, but Isun chases after her, ultimately uncovering the truth about the wife's secret. That evening, the family decorates their boat, naming it Golden Silver Chart, with the children's input. The scene of them sailing under the stars is heartwarming. However, tragedy strikes in August 1978 when a sudden storm hits. Isun's son, Tong Ming, spills candy, prompting her to scold him in frustration. Suddenly, news arrives that the boat Golden Silver Chart is in trouble. Sun rushes out, passing by her aunt's house, asking her to watch the children, but mistakenly thinks the aunt hurt her. She finds the boat and reprimands the crew before realizing Tong Ming is missing. The village mobilizes to search for the boy, and even Guan Xik, busy repairing a seawall, joins in. Heartbreakingly, Tong Ming is swallowed by the sea. The tragedy leaves Guan Xik and Yi Sun devastated. Yi Sun dreams of her mother, who urges her to keep moving forward, recalling her own struggles as a diver who faced death many times but always resurfaced. Awakening from the dream, Yi Sun tries to find comfort in her surviving children, but guilt and sorrow linger. Yi Sun's daughter blames herself for her brother's death, feeling she should have protected him. Guan Xik discovers his test papers and scolds her gently for hiding her achievements, unaware she feels undeserving due to her guilt. The family embraces, finding solace in each other's arms. Days later, Guan Xik heads out to fish again. Yi Sun's daughter dutifully helps him with his shoes, and Yi Sun even sets a bowl for her daughter at dinner. Life slowly moves on, but the pain remains. Yi Sun struggles with guilt, blaming herself for placing his son on the dock that fateful day, but Guan Xik comforts her, saying the blame lies with fate. Years pass. Yi Sun's daughter visits the hospital to see Yi Sun and mentions how Guan Xik has been stubbornly working on the earthen wall. Yi Sun feels deeply troubled, not understanding how Guan Xik made it through all this. At that moment, Yi Sun notices that her daughter, who claimed to have already eaten lunch, is still snacking. She later learns that the villagers have been secretly giving her food, causing Yi Sun to break down emotionally again. The landlord's grandfather prepares to give all the eggs to Yi Sun, but the grandmother objects. The grandfather complains, saying, "It's just a few eggs. You even gave them rice before." It turns out that in July 1973, Yi Sun's family had run out of rice, and she wanted to borrow some from the grandmother, who pretended not to understand. However, Sun noticed that every night before bed, the rice jar was empty, but by morning, a small amount of rice had mysteriously appeared. Initially, she thought it was too dark to see clearly, but it happened repeatedly, leading her to suspect the grandmother was secretly helping. The grandmother feared Yi Sun would refuse the rice if given directly. She even gave Yi Sun some octopus. The women in the village would also quietly prepare meals for Yi Sun. The 3 months of rent were actually paid on Yi Sun's behalf by her aunt. These heartwarming details are truly touching. Yi Sun anxiously waits for her daughter to return, hoping she passed the university entrance exam. When she learns she got in, she's so excited she can barely speak. The couple accompanies her to register at the university. As Yi Sun calls out to her daughter, she notices her standing with a classmate's father, who seems supportive. The classmate is also considerate. The couple reflects on how life's hardships have strengthened their bond. As South Korea prepares for the Seoul Olympics, the government bans fishermen from setting up stalls on the beach to present a modern image to foreign visitors. This decision devastates the fishermen's livelihoods. When the village captain sides with the authorities, dismissing the fishermen's concerns, the women divers and Aichuan confront him. Sun dramatically lies down in the path of a bulldozer, demanding the villagers' rights. The captain cruelly orders the bulldozer forward, but Yi Sun stands her ground, declaring, "Run me over if you dare." The standoff forces the captain to retreat, making Yi Sun a local hero. The villagers rally behind her, urging her to run for the village chairperson position. Although Yi Sun initially hesitates, her husband Guan Xik, eager to become the first gentleman, encourages her. Meanwhile, the current captain, feeling threatened, starts spreading malicious rumors about Yi Sun, accusing her of running away at 18 and having a child out of wedlock. These lies damage Yi Sun's reputation, but she stands firm. The captain attempts to bribe villagers by hosting a barbecue, but Yi Sun's resolve only grows stronger. Sun faces challenges at home. Her mischievous other son In-ming causes trouble by prying the logo off a teacher's car and confusing a bundle of complaint letters. Frustrated, he accuses Yi Sun of favoring her son over him. His son is speechless. On their way home, a girl's backpack displays the missing car logo, revealing the culprit. Back at the school, Yi Sun's daughter leaves in a car with a boy, hinting at a relationship. The captain, meanwhile, plants a tree at the village hall, carving his name into it and bad-mouthing Aesun. The women divers, led by Aesun, overhear this. When the captain later makes unwanted advances on the female shopkeeper while campaigning, the divers catch him red-handed. Aesun and the women boldly threaten to expose his indecent behavior if he doesn't back off. This bold confrontation boosts Aesun's popularity further. She gains widespread support. The plot thickens as the village captain withdraws from the election. To show her gratitude, Aesun throws a celebration, offering the best food from her home and even getting her mother-in-law to make pancakes. Surprisingly, the captain's wife shows up, admitting she also voted for Aesun. During the party, Sun dances wildly, abandoning her image as a refined literary woman, while Gwan-sik watches supportively. After the celebration, Gwan-sik romantically carries Aesun home on his back. The next day, while the plot thickens for Aesun's daughter, it turns out she was riding a tutoring client's car, not going on a date. The tutoring job quickly becomes complicated when Aesun's daughter first collects her payment from a jar, resisting the housekeeper's suggestion to take extra. Suddenly, she's summoned by Mrs. Fu, who shocks her by proposing an outrageous deal. Mrs. Fu, lamenting her missed education, asks Aesun's daughter to take her daughter's university entrance exam, promising a luxury apartment if she secures a spot in a top 3 university. Even a lesser-ranked school would still earn Aesun's daughter a 2-bedroom apartment. Aesun's daughter is stunned but refuses, knowing cheating would ruin her integrity. Mrs. Fu tries to manipulate Aesun's daughter, bringing up her financial struggles and parents' sacrifices. She even offers to bribe the proctors and ensures a foolproof plan. Aesun's daughter stays firm, valuing self-respect over money. When Mrs. Fu insults her pride, Aesun's daughter retorts that her daughter is talentless and rude. She storms out, pocketing 4 times her tutoring fee as a final jab. However, things take a shocking turn when Aesun's daughter is accused of stealing a diamond ring. Security detains her, and Aesun's daughter assumes they mean her tutoring fee. She hands over the cash, only to realize Mrs. Fu has falsely accused her. Desperate, Aesun's daughter returns to confront Mrs. Fu, who refuses to answer the door. Aesun's daughter is dragged to the police station, feeling humiliated and panicked. At the station, the police want to search her, but Aesun's daughter protests, feeling degraded. The officers threaten to call her father, and she worries about his health. Meanwhile, Mrs. Fu's daughter questions her mother's actions, asking why she lied and called the police. As the loyal housekeeper steps in to save Aesun's daughter from a wrongful accusation. Knowing the truth, she hides the stolen ring in her sleeve and pretends to find it under the table. She demands Mrs. Fu call the police to admit her mistake, but Mrs. Fu stubbornly refuses until the housekeeper threatens to expose her. Desperate, Mrs. Fu reluctantly makes the call, and Aesun's daughter is released. It's revealed that the housekeeper had a past connection with Aesun's daughter's family. 20 years ago, her parents had helped her, and now she repays their kindness by protecting their daughter. However, Mrs. Fu isn't ready to give up. She continues her search for a scapegoat to take the exam and is eventually caught and arrested. Aesun's daughter calls home, only to learn her father is on his way to visit her. Meanwhile, Gwan-sik travels a grueling journey of over 24 hours to see his daughter. She grumbles about his sudden trip but secretly worries about him waiting too long. As she finally arrives back at school, she spots her father shivering in the cold. Gwan-sik eagerly watches every bus, hoping to see his daughter. When they finally reunite, Aesun's daughter starts venting her frustrations, but Gwan-sik's only concern is whether she's cold. He brushes off her questions about how long he's waited, not wanting her to feel guilty. Over a bowl of noodles, Aesun's daughter vents about quitting her tutoring job, losing her scholarship, and struggling to adjust to university life. She feels burdened by guilt for giving up a chance to study abroad and fears she's failed her father's expectations. Gwan-sik reassures her, saying life's setbacks are normal. Aesun's daughter wants more than just studying and working. She wants a life of fulfillment but feels trapped. She wants to apologize for disappointing him, but the words won't come. Gwan-sik silently picks out the squid from her bowl, a habit from her childhood that makes her snap, frustrated by his overprotectiveness. When it's time to say goodbye, Gwan-sik anxiously watches her bus leave. Mustering courage, he waves and says goodbye. Yi-sun's daughter remembers her mom's words, to be kinder to her dad, and waves back, a scene mirroring her childhood farewells when her father left for sea. To Gwansik, she'll always be his little girl. As a plane flies over her mother's head, Yi-sun's daughter realizes the true essence of family love. Yi-sun's daughter once had a golden opportunity to study abroad, but she chose to stay. Yi-sun's daughter originally intended to give the study abroad opportunity to a classmate, thinking it was a noble gesture. However, the classmate's reaction was incredibly disappointing. Not only did she mock Yi-sun's daughter for losing the chance, but she also ridiculed Yi-sun's daughter's poverty and arrogantly claimed that studying abroad wasn't just about grades, background and family conditions were more important. Furious, Yi-sun's daughter turned and left. She approached a professor, explaining that her major in Anglo-American literature wasn't suitable for studying in Japan and that it would delay her graduation. The professor, who saw through the classmate's pettiness, noted that the classmate looked down on others. Since Yi-sun's daughter didn't meet the requirements for a government-funded study abroad program, the professor decided to sponsor her personally. Before she could finish her offer, Yi-sun's daughter was already leaving, only then realizing the professor came from a wealthy family. The professor said Yi-sun's daughter could repay her when she had the money. Yi-sun's daughter was deeply grateful. To express her gratitude, Yi-sun's daughter asked her mother to send a box of his favorite dried goods. Yi-sun, curious about the professor's sponsorship, kept asking her daughter if she wanted to study abroad and how much it would cost. Yi-sun's daughter didn't want her mother to know, but under Yi-sun's persistent questioning, she finally had to tell her mother, getting frustrated in the process. Yi-sun was left speechless. Looking at his study abroad application, Yi-sun's daughter found that she barely met the requirements. Suddenly, a bus arrived. She decided to walk home instead. At a street corner, she saw an old woman selling vegetables in the rain and bought everything from her without hesitation. Yi-sun and Gwansik had to sell their house to support her. On her final visit to the village, Yi-sun placed the village token next to the bowl of candies she had prepared for her daughter. That night, Yi-sun saw her mother preparing dinner and telling her she had given their new address to Tongnu, hoping her daughter would find them. The family moved to the city to make a living. At that moment, Yi-sun's daughter's plane flew overhead. She had successfully gone abroad to study. Yi-sun was overwhelmed with emotions. The sacrifices of 2 generations finally brought her daughter this precious opportunity. From here, the first part of the series ends. Thanks for watching. Like and drop a heart if you love the story.